Good afternoon. I'm John Lincoln from the Photonics Leadership Group, and I'm going to give you an update on the size of the UK photonics industry today. This video is in three parts. The first, the headlines, what's changed, the growth and impact. Then follow part two when we look at the regional breakdown of photonics in the UK and the industry structure. And then part three, the impact of photonics in the broader economy and how it compares to other sectors and some policy and future opportunities and challenges. So back in 2019, this was how big we said photonics was, 13.5 billion. And these were numbers we released in July 2019, but they refer to the previous year, 2018. So what's changed? So this is the latest update. UK photonics has grown to be a 14.5 billion pound industry. That's up $1 billion on 2 years ago. Now employs 76,700 people. That's up over 7,000 employees from 2 years ago. Adds 6.5 billion to the economy. That's 85,000 pounds per gross value add per person. A very significant productivity. And like for like growth, I'll go into that in a little bit more detail soon, of 12%. Looking at a little bit more detail on how we generate these figures, well, we start from a definition of photonics, anything involved in the generation, manipulation, control and transmission of light. And our direct objective is to size UK photonics industry output, what is made in the UK, what is domestically produced. It is local production value. It does not mean the same as a local market. Not all of that is sold in the UK. In fact, a great deal is exported, as you'll see. And we try and use a consistent methodology. This methodology has been unchanged since 2017 and was pioneered by myself at Harlan Limited and has been applied to UK acoustics, UK fluid dynamics, photonics in Australia and New Zealand, and is very close to the methodology used by SPIE globally and most recently by Temetis in Europe. The consistent methodology means we can do like-for-like growth rates, and in fact we can back out the impact of COVID-19. And that methodology starts from a list of photonics producing firms, and then importantly for large diversified companies looks at the fraction of their output that can be correctly applied to photonics, and then applies that fraction to financial data we pull from Dun & Bradstreet, which gives turnover, profit and employee numbers as reported annually to Companies House in the UK. Those company reports are delayed by 12 to 18 months, and that's why the figures we publish now refer to 2020 and earlier. And we use a regional distribution, not from registered addresses, but from operational addresses for companies. So the key to this whole process is this apportionment. What fraction of a company's output, especially large diversified companies, should we consider to be photonics? Does the company have any internal expertise in photonics, in engineering, in production, and delivery? Does it add value through its internal photonics knowledge? Or does it just buy and integrate photonics from elsewhere? The example I often give is, say, in the automotive industry. In automotive in the UK, car companies tend not to have any photonics or light experts inside them, but they buy headlights from elsewhere, and that design is done by the headlight designers. So we do not include anybody from the automotive sector in sizing UK photonics. If you do the same for acoustics, you get a different answer, because automotive companies do include and employ acoustics designers. Acoustic insulation is a key part of their manufacturing, so a small fraction of the automotive industry is included in acoustics, but as I say, not in photonics. In photonics, the difficult ones are things like laser processing. If you have somebody doing laser-based materials processing, cutting, welding, marking, they're in at a small fraction of what they do depending on how many other services they provide, and that's because in developing a, say, cutting process, you need intimate knowledge of the interaction of light and metal to optimize that process. So that's definitely photonics expertise, but it's not the only thing those companies do. Ophthalmic lenses, another interesting one. There are very little and very few differences between the ophthalmic lenses I may wear and the lenses that may go into, say, a laser. In fact, these are very focal, so they're much more complicated with complicated coatings. So the manufacture of those, where it's done in the UK, is in, but dispensing of them is not. Obviously, we don't include opticians. And optical fiber installation and networks similarly are in. There is, I think, very little difference in the skill set of the technician who recently spliced optical fiber together at the top of the telegraph pole outside my house to the optical fiber splicing that may be done in the production of a fiber laser, for example. So in both cases, they are in. What's changed in our 2021 analysis? Well, we now have over 1,200 organizations in the database, up by over 200 from 2019. We have about 1,500 operational locations for those companies spread across the UK. And we take salary data from an average of 7,000 employees spread over about 35 firms, and that's a key component of calculating gross value add. We publish online the list of all UK Photonics companies, and we're always happy to have updates to people who think they should be included on that list. And in the near future, we hope to convert that to a fully linked directory so that you can click through to companies to get to their website. And indeed, PLG hopes to be offering sponsored directory entries shortly in order to generate a little revenue to try and produce this data every 2 years. We are also working on the classification of companies against the markets they focus on and the tiers in which they operate in. That's an ongoing process. Classifying 1,200 organizations takes a little time, and if anybody wants to help me with that, they are very welcome to do so. Growth, well, like-for-like growth, 12% over 2 years, 5.8% compound average. Now that is based on companies that were both in the list last time in 2019 and 2021, so it excludes any additions. And it also excludes the impact of COVID-19 because what we've done is only include companies who reported results before the 1st of May 2020. So it essentially removes 99% of the impact of COVID. What you see if you compare to the full 2020 results, you see that if we had grown by that same 5.8% CAGR over the full 2 years, we should have been a £15 billion industry, actually only a 14.5. So COVID has cost about £500 million in growth, but the long-term average remains over 4.6%, almost 5%, over now almost a 8-year period plus, which is 4 times the average UK manufacturing growth. And so for the first time, I'm able to use and project these figures forwards, and I'm very happy to make a PLG conservative forecast of how big the industry will be in another 2 years. And we forecast Photonics, UK Photonics will grow to a £16 billion industry at least by 2022, and that should be reflected in the numbers we report in 2023. The impact of COVID, well, we did 2 surveys as the PLG, one in spring and one in autumn last year, on how COVID was impacting photonics manufacturers in the UK. And by the autumn, over 90% were reporting they were operating at 75% capacity, indeed 16% increased capacity. So I think it's fair to say UK Photonics is fully operational, and a great deal of work has adjusted to the restrictions of COVID-19 and been able to continue to produce high quality products. Talking of those products, through that same survey, we were also able to get inputs on where people send their output, and 2 out of 3 photonics manufacturers in the UK export 75% or more of their output. In fact, almost a third of manufacturers export 90% of what they make from the UK. So of that 14.5 billion output, a great deal of that is exported. If you ask people whether those exports will continue post-COVID, post-Brexit, and it is impossible to decompose those two, most people say they expect exports to increase in the post-Brexit, post-COVID period. Where do those exports go? Europe, certainly, but also North America, China, Asia, and all over the world. And in fact, one of the reasons that export strength will remain strong and fairly immune to things like Brexit is because UK photonics companies are used to doing export paperwork for countries all over the world. They export a lot outside Europe, and therefore to do new export paperwork for Europe is a case of applying similar numbers to different boxes on a different form, but not a form that is potentially that new to them. That finishes part 1. Please join us for part 2, the following video where we look at the regional breakdown of photonics in the UK and the industry structure, and then part 3 when we look at photonics impact and compare it to other sectors around the UK.